How do you properly describe a movie that's like 5 different genres all mashed together? Apparently you don't, which is why there's been so little marketing for this film. They didn't really know how to sell it. But I implore you, if you can find it playing near you, it is absolutely worth checking out. I had to go to a smaller theater that I haven't been to in like 5 years because it was the only one around me that was playing it, but the Rivals of Amziah King deserves more recognition than it is probably going to get. This is a musical slice of life drama crime thriller, I suppose. It's not a musical. Characters don't just burst into song at random, but music is an integral part of the characters' lives. Our main character, played by Matthew McConaughey, plays music with his friends. They do it often. The soundtrack of the movie is really good, and the editing and the pace of the movie is often very driven by the music. It's an essential part of it. A very large portion of the movie, half of it, maybe more, is kind of just a hangout slice of life, where we're with Matthew McConaughey as a man who keeps bees. Bees? He plays in a band. Every member of this community knows him. They all love him. He's super charismatic, super nice, friendly guy. He takes this girl under his wing that he knew when she was a child, and she's come back into town, and he's kind of getting her into the business and showing her the ropes of beekeeping. And we just deal with various issues. There's a bit of a case of stolen honey that we learn about early on, so we know that there's going to be more of a plot introduced later on. There's going to be a crime element, but a huge part of the movie is just us getting engrossed in these characters' worlds, watching them go to dinner with each other, hang out, learning about them. They play music together. This girl's kind of coming out of her shell and getting a little bit less shy and willing to go and do these things with Amziah. And it's just nice getting to see these very natural, real feeling people living their lives. And Matthew McConaughey is phenomenal. A character like this, who is so like fast talking and quippy, knows everybody, loves everybody, everybody loves him. Like, you gotta get a really charismatic actor for that. And McConaughey is so good. And he should probably get an Oscar nomination, and probably won't, because this is going to fly so far under the radar for so many people. But I knew there was a crime element to this film, so I was surprised how long it really takes to get there. But that's actually really well done, because if it happened after the first 20, 30 minutes like it might in a typical movie, it would feel like, okay, that beginning stuff, that was the setup, but now the real plot can actually start. But the way it is here, we spend so long just getting engrossed in these characters' lives and their world that by the time the crime element comes in and they actually lose something, it feels like a real loss. It feels like their world has been shattered, and the world that we've been in this whole time is just now completely upended. And now I'm just like, what? Well, now what? Everything has changed. It's just a different movie now. And it makes decisions in the plot that had me concerned, because I was like, you have just now changed things drastically, very suddenly. And I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if I'm going to like what comes as much as what came before, because you've now done a complete 180 here. But it ended up all working out. Like, as much as this movie changes, it becomes a crime thriller, there's a heist, it becomes about revenge, and all these unpredictable things happen. And yet, everything that happened ended up being in service of the larger story and ended up working. It really was unique and unpredictable. There was one thing that I thought for sure was gonna happen. I was like, okay, you're actually laying that on a little bit too thick. You're making that too obvious. And no, I was completely wrong. In fact, the exact opposite thing happened than what I thought. I was as wrong as I could have been. And once these crime elements begin, you have Kurt Russell as the villain, who is barely in the movie at all, but leaves a really strong impression. Like, the amount that I disliked this man versus the little bit of screen time that he had is really impressive. That they can get you to have such strong feelings towards a character that you barely even really see, and you don't see until very late into the movie, just because the way the movie changes so suddenly because of his actions, it shakes things up so strongly that you immediately hate the guy before you've ever even actually met him. And this movie isn't afraid to get a little dark. It isn't afraid to have the characters be not perfect people. There are times when we see a little bit of humanity to our villain in an unexpected scene. And then there are times when characters that I'm rooting for do some pretty fucked up things. There's one scene in particular where one of the good guys is contemplating doing something pretty bad. And I was like, I don't know if I can keep rooting for you if you do that. Like, I get where your mind is at. I get what you're trying to accomplish in the long run here. I understand where you're coming from, but that is pretty fucked up. And then they backed off and they decided not to do it. And I was like, okay, they've had an attack of conscience. No, they actually just changed their plan and they decided instead to do something even worse. And I was like, wow, okay. But I actually found that interesting. I like that they were willing to let these characters get dirty. There were characters I was rooting for and not rooting for, clearly, but it wasn't just perfect good guys and perfect bad guys. They let some of these good guys do things very questionable and very fucked up in pursuit of what they consider to be revenge or justice. And it's going to leave some people conflicted and thinking, wow, I don't even really know how I feel about the outcome of that by the end. But I think that's fascinating because, again, I understand where they're coming from as a character and why they do that, even if I don't agree. I think that's interesting that they let the characters be so imperfect. And it's a world that really just feels lived in. It was a great supporting cast. Angelina Lookingglass is this girl that Matthew McConaughey is taken under his wing. And you got these other characters like Jake Horowitz and Owen Teague and Cole Sprouse, who aren't in the movie a ton, but again, they just feel like real people. A lot of it feels very natural, the way they talk and hang out with each other. And so it just feels like this tight-knit community, and I'm kind of learning about the world of beekeeping and honey extraction and all that, and I'm enjoying it even before the real plot has kicked in. In fact, I would say I probably liked the first half more. I was very shocked by certain things that happened, and I was left on the edge of my seat like, well, now what? Now what are we going to do? And I really wanted to see justice and revenge, and I wanted to see where it was all going to go because I never really knew. Every time it seemed like one thing was settled, oh, actually, nope, it hasn't been, and now we got to go do a whole different thing. That was all very engaging, but I do think I preferred the first half when we're really just getting into these characters and this town. That setup is so strong. That's the reason I cared about the second half when the shit hit the fan. To even call it setup is an insulting. It's just an entire movie going on, an entire plot. There are things like certain studios would demand the removal of entire sequences from this movie. Like, there's this whole section in the first half where there's a bee swarm at a school and they got to go there and take care of that. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything. It doesn't contribute to the crime plot that we get into later, but it's just time spent with our characters, getting to know them and this world, which, like I said, just makes it all the more devastating when they lose things later on. And so there are some people who would say, why is all of this time being wasted? We gotta cut this down. We gotta make this more marketable, more easy to explain what it is to an audience. But the fact that it is so unique and it isn't so easy to describe is what made it interesting. Like I said, I probably prefer the first half. I do wish there had been a way for Kurt Russell to be in it more. He had been so impactful with such little screen time. And I also like the fact that it takes so long to get to the crime thriller, so it would have been weird if he was introduced early on as the obvious villain, and then we just kind of have to wait for him to do whatever he's gonna do. I like the way it was done, but I also do wish we could have had a little bit more from him, a little bit more of like a personal connection with him, because as I won't say too much about his character, but he's mostly just like greedy businessman, and I would have liked a little bit more there. And the only other thing I'll say that's a negative is there were some times I felt like it was trying a little bit too hard to be stylish. Like at the beginning and end of the movie, it keeps doing this freeze frame thing. Like it'll show the scenes happening and then it'll just freeze for a second. And it was a little bit distracting. I was like, oh, okay, I see that this is just a choice that you've gone with. But it felt a little bit like overindulgence. And there were a couple moments like that, like scenes that are in slow motion and we're cutting back and forth between characters and we keep seeing characters like smiling at what's going on. And we cut back to them over and over and over, and the scene is going on and it's kind of slow motion and it's extending, and they're smiling and they're smiling. I get it. I get it. Cut. Some little directorial flourishes that I appreciate. It gives it its own identity, but there were some moments where I felt like that's just a little too much. I think you actually need to tone that down. But for the most part, it is quite stylish in what it's going for. This is the kind of movie I'm really curious to watch a second time, because it goes in so many different directions that by the end, I didn't entirely know what to think. Like, I knew that I really liked it. I could tell you all the elements that I talked about here in this video, and I've still been thinking about it. It has stuck with me. But as far as all the choices the characters make, where the story eventually goes, what it's trying to say with the whole thing, like, I'm gonna need a second viewing to really firmly come down on how I feel about all that, because like the movie is just so unique and does so many different things. And even though most people who've seen it have been liking it so far, it will be at least somewhat divisive in that regard, and I just think that's interesting. I think unique movies like this should absolutely be supported. So that's why I'm here, in the hopes that if this wasn't on someone's radar, even if it's just one person, maybe you'll go and give this a shot, because it's pretty good. It has entered my top 10 of the year so far. But this was all just my opinion, so if you've seen The Rivals of Amziah King, leave your thoughts in the comments. Whether you agree or disagree, we can talk about it down there. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe. If you want to see more from me, I appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time.